It's been hinted that Meyer plans to write at least 2 books in a Twilight sequel series, presumably to complete Renesmee's story, but little else has been said. And although Meyer admitted to having a chapter written of this book before she released Breaking Dawn, she's been tight-lipped about the project. It's not unlikely that Meyer wished to wait a certain amount of time, even as she needed a break from Twilight. After all, even taking her accelerated aging into account, at least 7 years have to pass before Renesmee will be mature. What's more, were Lionsgate to adapt the new project, Mackenzie Foy would be closer to the correct age now to reprise her character than she was a few years ago. However, what's less clear is if Renesmee will end up with Jacob. While most have always assumed she will, the relationship was nothing if not controversial, with Jacob even being compared by some fans to a child groomer. Meyer has hinted that this series will be a duology. However, given the amount I'd like to see covered in such a series, to say nothing of Renesmee's own character, that seems like too little to me. Moreover, the original Twilight saga wasn't meant to be longer than 2 books. Initially, a sequel followed Twilight, which cut directly to Bella becoming pregnant. Jacob was no more than a bit part, having lacked the time to grow close to Bella, and elements like Edward leaving never happened. However, Meyer, after sharing the second book with her family, decided to rewrite it, fleshing out the series with Bella's attachment to Jacob, Edward's absence, and additional time with the Valkyrie. In my opinion, a duology which tried to introduce the Valkyrie and Bella's pregnancy in the same book would have felt rushed. And I can't help expressing doubt over 2 books being enough for Renesmee. Whether Meyer ends up expanding the project or sticking to a duology, I'm left wondering over Renesmee's future. While Renesmee herself should be explored, I can't overlook the idea of her having kids, either with Jacob or somebody else. Bella ended her series with a child, and so it wouldn't be unnatural for Renesmee's own conclusion to mirror that of her mother's. Still, Jacob remains a controversial figure, and YA books, especially the Twilight books themselves, thrive by having a love interest. As such, I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob has competition. Furthermore, if Renesmee does have children, those kids could in turn become the stars of their own series. If Renesmee's story is only 2 books, further events, such as the defeat of the Valkyrie or an exploration of Leah's character, could be covered in another duology or trilogy. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about fantasy books, discuss characters and lore, offer my bookish opinion, and share the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of blood, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. Whatever the case, I'm here to speculate, not only on Renesmee's children, but on who she's likely to have them with. Though the kids of Jacob would be a fascinating mix of vampire and wolf blood, his choice as a love interest is the elephant in the room. Number 1. A daughter with psychic talent. This might be no more than fan fiction, but I've long imagined Renesmee as having a daughter. Now, this daughter may or may not be a wolf. If anything, she'll have a brother who can become a wolf, while she will be powerful in her own way. That's right, I'm certain that any child of Renesmee's will have a psychic talent, given her background. I picture a specific power too, and one that may be more trouble than help. First, we have to analyze the abilities of this child's ancestors. Going all the way back to Charlie and Renee, there are interesting abilities. If you've read Midnight Sun, you'll know that Edward picks up on latent talents from both of Bella's parents. Charlie simply has a weaker version of Bella's shield. His thoughts can be read, but they're indistinct. Renee, though, has a notable talent. Renee has the power to compel people. Others are drawn to Renee and want to do what she wants. She doesn't use this ability consciously, but were she to become a vampire, she'd likely have the ability to project her thoughts to others or push them into obeying her. With Renee and Charlie's talents being combined, we end up with Bella's shield. Furthermore, Bella's shield is infallible. No one can penetrate her mind. Therefore, Renesmee's gift is considered a reversal of not only Edward's talents, but Bella's. While Bella can keep everyone out, no one can keep Renesmee from their minds. Renesmee's gift also flips Edward's. While Edward can sift through the thoughts of others, Renesmee can project her own thoughts out instead. Taking all these talents together, I believe this girl, like Renesmee, would have a talent for projection, only instead of sharing images, she'd share thoughts. In fact, she'd share them whether or not she wanted to, her talent mirroring that of the wolves from which she's descended. All wolves, well phased, can share their thoughts. However, they have no privacy when doing so, and the gift can be as much of a curse as a blessing. Being part vampire and shaped by the gifts in her mother's family, the daughter of Renesmee may have such an ability on constantly, creating conflict and trouble for her family. This talent, helpful at best and compromising at worst, would be a culmination of all of the talents that came before. It's my own little headcanon, but I feel this girl would also be named Rachel. Rachel is the name of one of Jacob's sisters, and it would be appropriate for him to acknowledge her in this way. Of course, if Renesmee has a daughter, she may also have sons. Personal theory number 2, a new race of superwolves. The books never confirm whether or not a vampire-human hybrid is capable of pregnancy, but personally I believe they are. I've said this in previous videos, but the text suggests that Renesmee can procreate when Carlyle posits two theories in regards to imprinting. First, a person may be imprinted on if they have a better chance of passing on the wolf gene. Second, and this is most significant, a person might be imprinted on because of an increased chance of creating stronger wolves. Nothing would make the wolves stronger than introducing diluted vampire DNA into their blood. A pure vampire is repulsive to a shapeshifter, their scent burning their noses and clogging their senses. But Jacob never gives any indication that Renesmee's scent is disgusting to him, despite her DNA from Edward. Instead, he imprinted on her, which means if either of Carlyle's theories are correct, she could have his children. Renesmee's aging will halt, but there's no reason she can't change in other ways. Vampire women can't have children because they're frozen, and so their bodies can't shift. But Renesmee, simply by growing from an infant to an adult, has proven her body can change. Furthermore, she can eat human food, and digestion in itself is an act of change, as the body takes the nutrients in the food and converts them. Vampires can't eat food, but Renesmee can. She may even be able to gain weight. With a beating heart and human-like blood, she likely has a metabolism and hormones. The presence of any of these traits proves her body can change. That's why I believe she can have kids. And were she to have sons with Jacob, she'd be the mother of a new race of superwolves. With vampire DNA in their blood, these shapeshifters would have tougher skin, increased speed, and potentially venom with which to incapacitate their victims. Furthermore, they may lack the weakness all other wolves have, an aversion to vampire venom. Vampire venom can make the likes of Jacob or Seth extremely sick, putting them out of commission. but any kids of Renesmee and Jacob would be immune, allowing them to keep fighting even as they took multiple bites. As a quick aside, be sure to like this video if you've enjoyed it so far. Theory number 3, an alternative shifter father. Fascinating as any children between Jacob and Renesmee would be, I haven't forgotten that elephant. Owing to the differences in their ages, and the fact Jacob imprinted on Renesmee when she was a baby, many are wigged out by the relationship, even more so in the modern age when we've had more than a decade to shift as a culture. A romance between Renesmee and Jacob could go over badly. At the very least, if Jacob is a contender, Renesmee should still have options. She should be shown as having a choice, whether to accept Jacob or not. Otherwise, she'll lack any autonomy in the relationship, which could lead to further suggestions of child grooming. Jacob's DNA is fascinating, and the kids he could have with Renesmee would be both unique and mysterious. Even if he's controversial, that's a lot of potential to leave on the table. Therefore, what if Renesmee did have the option of choosing a wolf, but not Jacob? Little is understood of imprinting, and the number of wolves present in Forks have reached an unprecedented number. Taking all this into account, what if a second wolf, and one who was the same age as Renesmee, imprinted on her? It would give Renesmee a choice, and offer an alternative to viewers who were turned off Jacob, while still leaving the possibility of super hybrid kids open. Moreover, Renesmee might choose someone without any imprinting being involved at all, showing that those who are imprinted on retain agency over their own lives. Such a possibility might sound tragic for Jacob, but even the original books made it clear that, while it's the typical outcome, imprinting doesn't have to be romantic. Jacob has to be whatever Renesmee needs, and if she chooses someone else, Jacob can still remain devoted to her, albeit in a more platonic way. To use the saga's own words, he could be a brother, a friend, or a protector to her, content to fight on her behalf for the rest of his days. Wolves display a dogged attachment to those they've imprinted on, pun intended. And, odd as it might seem at first, I don't see Jacob being miserable in the long run. While he was hurt by Bella's rejection, what he has with Renesmee is still different. Any romance would be a secondary component, and those who have imprinted show a tolerance that few others possess. As long as Renesmee is happy, Jacob will be happy, because her well-being is the primary function of the bond. Personal theory number 4, the children of Nahuel. A second shifter isn't the only possibility raised by the Jacob controversy. A love triangle would almost be a given, even without the imprinting debacle, because of the genre Renesmee's story exists within. It's typical for YA books to include love triangles, and Twilight can be credited with reigniting the fervor for the trope. No shipping debate is better known than that of Team Edward versus Team Jacob, with the argument setting the precedent for conflicted fandoms to come. You can't write a Twilight book and not have a fiery debate surrounding who the girl will ultimately choose. If a second shifter was too convenient, or Meyer wanted to complicate matters, throwing Nahuel into the mix would have a certain logic. He's the only male of Renesmee's kind. He's a pre-established character, but one who we still have plenty to learn about, and Bella herself raises concerns over his being interested in Renesmee, which could be taken as foreshadowing. Any children Renesmee had with Nahuel would, like those she had with Jacob, be unique. What we'd end up with was an Adam and Eve story, in which the pair usher in the new super beings Nahuel's father always dreamed of making. On the other hand, Meyer could subvert expectations and make the couple incapable of procreating. Even if Renesmee herself could become pregnant, having children with another hybrid might be impossible. Many half-breeds in nature, after all, are sterile. If this was the case, Renesmee's story with Nahuel could challenge the narrative that women need to have children to be happy, subverting rather than mirroring Bella's story. At the same time, Renesmee could still have kids, possibly with Jacob, as he might agree to donate the necessary materials, so to speak, even if there's nothing between them, thereby giving us the Superwolves. Or Leah could simply hook up with Nahuel to make some super wolf babies, and everyone could leave Renesmee in peace to be her own woman. In conclusion, when it comes to the directions Renesmee's story might go, and the stories that could follow from any children she might have, the possibilities are nearly endless. The world building alone would be fascinating, as we'd see the characters learning about their own genetics and biology. Everyone would be faced with the unknown, and Meyer will have a lot to play with, whichever route she chooses. If a romance with Jacob proves too unsettling to viewers, the introduction of a second shapeshifter or Nahuel could alleviate the issue, while also delivering on the promise of both the Twilight brand and the YA genre as a whole. From daughters who can project their thoughts, to new super races of hybrids or venom-immune shapeshifters, the promised sequels could be a lot of fun. Though, in my opinion, 2 books will be too little to cover the material I've discussed, let alone any further exploration of Leah or the Volturi's defeat, and further books may be needed beyond those of Renesmee to tie up the loose ends. If Meyer follows her past pattern, the duology may even expand into a trilogy or saga, before being followed by yet another series. One can only hope Meyer is as eager to return to the world as her legion of fans. What would you like to see in a sequel series? What do you imagine any children of Renesmee's being like? Are you anxious to see Jacob get competition? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading!